Conference room at Morrison and Associates was buzzing with excitement. 20 people from her department, plus a handful of partners, all gathered to celebrate her promotion to senior marketing director. I watched from across the room as she worked the crowd, that confident smile she'd perfected over the years plastered across her face. The same smile I'd supported through 3 years of night classes, weekend studying, and countless sacrifices on my end. She looked stunning tonight. Her auburn hair was pulled back in that sleek ponytail she wore for important meetings, and she'd chosen the navy blazer I'd bought her for Christmas last year. At 32, she carried herself with the kind of professional poise that came from climbing every rung of the corporate ladder. But somewhere along the way, she'd forgotten who held that ladder steady for her. The DJ was setting up in the corner, and I could see the catered spread they'd ordered from that Italian place downtown. Her boss had given a speech about dedication and hard work, conveniently leaving out the part about how I'd covered our mortgage for 2 years while she interned for free. How I'd eaten ramen noodles so she could attend those networking dinners. How I'd turned down my own opportunities so she could chase hers. I walked over with 2 glasses of champagne, genuinely proud despite everything. This was her moment, and I wanted to share it with her properly. After all, we'd both worked for this in our own ways. "Congratulations," I said, offering her the glass. "You earned this." She took the champagne, but stepped back slightly when I leaned in for a kiss. "Thanks," she said, her eyes scanning the room nervously. I moved closer, thinking she hadn't heard me over the chatter. "Come here, let me give you a proper congratulations kiss." That's when she put her hand up, creating a clear barrier between us. Her voice carried just enough volume for nearby colleagues to hear. "Not here. People might think I need a man's validation." The words hit me like a cold slap. Around us, conversations continued, but I could feel a few people glancing our way. My wife of 6 years, the woman I'd supported through every challenge, had just publicly rejected my affection because it might damage her image as an independent professional. I stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. She'd humiliated me in front of her entire office, made me look like some clingy husband who couldn't read social cues, reduced 6 years of partnership to something embarrassing she needed to distance herself from. The DJ was testing his microphone, and the feedback screeched through the room. Perfect timing. I walked over and gestured for the mic. The young guy looked confused but handed it over, probably thinking I was going to make a toast. "Attention, everyone." My voice cut through the room like a knife. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. She looked at me with panic in her eyes, already understanding that she'd crossed the wrong line with the wrong man. "My wife doesn't need a man's validation," I announced, looking directly at her as color drained from her face. "And I don't need a wife's disrespect. She's officially promoted to single." The room fell silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then something unexpected happened. Someone started clapping. Then another person joined in. Within moments, the entire room was applauding me, not her. Her colleagues, the same people she'd just performed for, were giving me a standing ovation. I handed the microphone back to the stunned DJ and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear the murmur of voices starting up again, but this time they weren't talking about her promotion. They were talking about what they'd just witnessed. She caught up with me in the hallway, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "What the hell was that?" "That," I said, not breaking stride toward the elevator, "was me refusing to be disrespected by my own wife in public. You wanted to make a statement about not needing validation? Congratulations. You just got exactly what you asked for." The drive home was silent. She sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, probably calculating how to spin what had just happened. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, preparing her defense strategy. Our house in suburban Denver felt different when we walked through the front door. The same beige walls, the same furniture we'd picked out together, but something fundamental had shifted. She'd drawn a line tonight, and I'd erased it completely. "Look, I was nervous," she finally said, setting her purse down on the kitchen counter. "There were partners there, people I need to impress. You know how important this promotion is to me." I poured myself a glass of water, taking my time before responding. "Important enough to humiliate your husband in front of a room full of strangers? That's not what I was doing." Her voice had that practiced calm she used during difficult client meetings. "I was just being professional. Women in corporate environments have to be careful about how they're perceived." "Professional?" I turned to face her fully. Was it professional when I worked double shifts so you could take that unpaid internship? Was it professional when I turned down the promotion in Phoenix because you didn't want to relocate? Or does professional only apply when it's convenient for you? She crossed her arms defensively. That's different. This was about maintaining my credibility with my team. Your team that just gave me a standing ovation? I let that sink in for a moment. Funny how your credibility worked out. The color returned to her cheeks, but not from embarrassment this time. You embarrassed me in front of my entire department. Do you have any idea what that's going to do to my career? Your career that I've been funding for the past 6 years? I set my glass down with deliberate control. Your career that exists because I sacrificed mine? Yeah, I have a pretty good idea what it's worth. She tried a different approach, stepping closer with that soft voice she used when she wanted something. Baby, you're overreacting. I know tonight didn't go the way we planned, but we can fix this. We can talk to a counselor, work through this communication issue. Communication issue? I almost laughed. There's no communication issue here. You communicated perfectly clearly. You don't want to be associated with me in professional settings because it might damage your image. Message received. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. I walked past her toward the stairs. And for the record, there's nothing to fix. You made your choice tonight. Now you get to live with the consequences. Over the next few days, those consequences became apparent. Her phone started buzzing with messages from colleagues who'd been at the party. Not the supportive messages she'd expected, but questions about what had really happened. Word was spreading through the office. By Wednesday, she came home visibly shaken. People are treating me differently at work, she said, dropping her briefcase by the door with less than her usual precision. Different how? They keep asking about you. About us. Some of them seem to think what you did was justified. The last word came out like she couldn't believe she was saying it. I was making dinner, something simple since I'd been handling most of the household responsibilities anyway, while she climbed her ladder. Maybe because it was justified. 3 people asked me today if we were getting divorced. Her voice cracked slightly. My assistant wanted to know if I needed time off to deal with personal issues. Do you? She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Do I what? Need time off to deal with personal issues? Because I'm starting to think we have some pretty serious personal issues to address. I thought you'd calm down by now. I thought we could move past this. I turned off the stove and gave her my full attention. Move past what exactly? Move past you publicly rejecting your own husband? Move past you reducing our marriage to something that embarrasses you? What exactly are we moving past? For the first time since the party, she looked genuinely uncertain. The corporate confidence was cracking, revealing something more vulnerable underneath. But I'd seen this performance before. She'd deployed tears and vulnerability whenever she needed to manipulate a situation back in her favor. I need you to understand my position, she said, her voice softer now. I've worked so hard to get where I am. I can't afford to have people think I'm where I am because of my husband's support instead of my own merit. So acknowledging that your husband loves you and is proud of you somehow diminishes your accomplishments? In some environments, yes. It's not fair, but that's reality. I nodded slowly. You're right. It's not fair. It's also not my problem anymore. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done being your dirty little secret. I'm done being the support system you're ashamed to acknowledge. I'm done pretending that's normal or acceptable. She stared at me for a long moment, probably waiting for me to soften, to back down like I might have in the past. But something had changed in me that night at her party. I discovered what it felt like to have self-respect, and I wasn't interested in giving it up. By Friday, she'd moved into full damage control mode. I came home from work to find her on the phone in the living room, speaking in that animated way she used when she was trying to convince someone of something. No, Mom. He completely overreacted, she was saying, pacing by the window. I was just trying to maintain professional boundaries, and he decided to make a scene in front of my entire department. I set my keys down louder than necessary. She glanced at me and lowered her voice, but I could still hear her spinning the story. According to her version, I was the unreasonable husband who couldn't handle his successful wife's independence. Over the weekend, the calls continued. Her sister, her college roommate, her yoga instructor who somehow qualified as a relationship expert. Each conversation followed the same pattern. She was the victim of an insecure husband's public tantrum. What she didn't know was that I'd started documenting everything. Not because I was planning anything specific, but because I'd learned to protect myself from people who liked to rewrite history. Screenshots of text messages where she'd complained about having to pretend to be grateful for my support. Voice messages where she'd laughed about how I didn't understand the corporate world. Monday morning brought an interesting development. My phone rang while I was having coffee before work. "This is going to sound weird," said the voice on the other end. It was Jake, someone I'd met at a few of her company events. "But I was at the promotion party last week, and I wanted you to know that most of us thought what you did was pretty reasonable." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Come again. Look, I've been working with your wife for 2 years now. We've heard her talk about how she's completely self-made and doesn't need anyone's help. But some of us have been around long enough to know that's not exactly true. When she turned down a perfectly normal congratulations from her own husband like that, man, it was hard to watch. This was unexpected. I appreciate you calling. There's more. She's been telling people around the office that you're controlling and couldn't handle her success. But the thing is, we were there. We saw what actually happened. You offered her champagne and tried to give her a congratulations kiss. That's not controlling behavior. That's normal husband behavior." After Jake hung up, I sat there processing this information. She wasn't just rewriting history for family and friends. She was doing it at work too, trying to salvage her professional image by painting me as the problem. That evening, she came home with a forced smile and Chinese takeout from our usual place. "I thought we could have a nice dinner together. Maybe watch a movie." "That's thoughtful," I said, though I could see the calculation behind the gesture. During dinner, she kept steering the conversation toward normal topics. Work gossip, weekend plans, anything that might restore the illusion that everything was fine. But I could see her checking her phone every few minutes, probably monitoring her social media damage control campaign. "I've been thinking about what you said," she finally ventured as we finished eating, "about feeling unappreciated. Maybe I could acknowledge your support more publicly." "How generous of you." She missed the sarcasm entirely. "I could post something on Instagram about how grateful I am for your partnership. Maybe mention how you've supported my career journey. Let me get this straight. You want to fix rejecting your affection in public by posting a curated social media statement about our marriage." "It's a start." I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot I'd saved from her Instagram story 2 months ago. It was a post about self-made women with the caption, "When people ask about my success, I tell them it's because I never let anyone else define my worth or make my decisions for me." Her face went pale. "Where did you get that?" "From your public Instagram account. The one where you regularly post about being an independent woman who doesn't need anyone. Funny how you never mention the husband who's been paying half your bills. That's not what those posts were about, aren't they?" I scrolled through her feed, finding post after post celebrating her independence and self-reliance. Here's one from last month. "The best investment you can make is in yourself. No one else is going to build your dreams for you." And here's another. "Success tastes sweeter when you earn it entirely on your own." She grabbed for the phone, but I pulled it back. Those are motivational posts. Everyone does that. Everyone doesn't systematically erase their spouse from their success story while that spouse is actively funding their career. I never erased you. Really? Because I count 47 posts about your career milestones, and I'm mentioned in exactly 0 of them. Your promotion announcement last month credited your hard work and determination. No mention of the husband who worked overtime so you could take those evening classes. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the takeout containers like they might provide an escape route. "I need you to understand something," I continued, setting my phone aside. "I'm not angry that you wanted to be seen as independent. I'm angry that you chose to be seen as independent by making me invisible. There's a difference. I never meant to make you feel invisible, but you did. And when I tried to be visible again at your party, you shut me down because it didn't fit your narrative." I stood up and started clearing the table. "Now you want to fix it with an Instagram post. Do you see how insulting that is?" She followed me to the kitchen, her professional composure finally cracking. "What do you want me to do? I can't undo what happened. I want you to understand what you did. I want you to admit that you prioritized your image over your husband's dignity. And I want you to accept that actions have consequences." "What kind of consequences?" I turned to face her, and for the first time since the party, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. She was starting to realize that this wasn't going to blow over like she'd planned. The next morning, she tried a different strategy. She came downstairs dressed in one of my favorite outfits, carrying a fresh cup of coffee made exactly the way I liked it. "I've been thinking all night," she said, settling beside me on the couch. You're right. I handled the whole situation wrong. I let the pressure of the corporate environment get to me, and I took it out on you. I accepted the coffee, but didn't respond immediately. This felt rehearsed. I want to make this right, she continued. I've already started telling people at work about how supportive you've been throughout my career. I mentioned to 3 different colleagues yesterday how you helped make my success possible. How generous. She either didn't catch my tone or chose to ignore it. I think we should go to couples counseling. I found a therapist who specializes in dual career relationships. She has great reviews. I set down the coffee and looked at her directly. Do you really think this is about communication skills? Isn't it? We both want the marriage to work. We just need to learn better ways to navigate these professional situations. The marriage. I repeated the words slowly. Tell me something. In this marriage that you want to work, what role do I play? She looked confused. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I asked. In your version of our marriage, what's my function? Am I the silent financial supporter who stays home while you network? Am I the invisible partner who celebrates your wins privately but never publicly? What exactly am I supposed to be? You're my husband, my partner. Partners acknowledge each other. Partners support each other publicly and privately. What you want is a sponsor who doesn't expect recognition. Her carefully constructed morning approach was already falling apart. That's not fair. What's not fair is 6 years of being treated like a business investor instead of a spouse. I stood up and walked to the window. What's not fair is being rejected when I try to show affection because it might damage your professional brand. I said I was wrong about that. No, you said you handled it wrong. That's different. You're not wrong about wanting independence. You're wrong about thinking independence means erasing your husband from your success story. She was quiet for several minutes, probably recalibrating again. When she spoke, her voice was smaller. What do you want from me? I want honesty. I want you to admit that you've been ashamed of needing my support. I want you to acknowledge that you've systematically minimized my role in your career because it conflicted with the image you wanted to project. And if I do that, if I admit all of that, I turn back to face her. Then we'll see if there's anything left to save. But even as I said it, I knew the answer. I'd already made an appointment with a divorce attorney for Thursday afternoon. Not because I was being impulsive, but because I'd finally accepted what this marriage had become. I was tired of being the supporting character in my own life. Wednesday evening brought the last-ditch effort I'd been expecting. She came home with flowers, a bottle of wine from our honeymoon trip, and what looked like a prepared speech. I've been doing some serious self-reflection, she began, arranging the flowers in a vase. I realize I've been prioritizing my career at the expense of our relationship. I've been so focused on proving myself professionally that I forgot to honor the man who made it all possible. The words were right, but they felt hollow, like a client presentation designed to win back a dissatisfied customer. I want to take you on a vacation. Somewhere nice. We could go back to that resort in Cabo, the one where we had such a good time. When? Next month. I can take some personal days. What about your promotion responsibilities? Won't people think you need time off to deal with personal issues? She flinched at my words being thrown back at her. I'll handle that. How? By telling them your marriage is more important than your career? Because that contradicts everything you've been building your professional identity around. I'm willing to adjust my priorities. Are you? Or are you willing to say you'll adjust your priorities until this blows over and things go back to normal? She set down the wine bottle harder than necessary. I'm trying to fix this. I'm trying to show you that you matter to me. You're trying to manage this. There's a difference. I walked over to my briefcase and pulled out a business card. I met with someone today. A lawyer. The color drained from her face. A lawyer? You're talking to divorce attorneys. I'm exploring my options. Without even giving counseling a chance. Without trying to work through this. I've been working through this for 6 years. I've been the understanding husband while you built your career. I've been the patient supporter while you figured out your professional identity. I've been the invisible partner while you celebrated every milestone as a solo achievement. She sank into the armchair, the fight going out of her. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did hurt me, repeatedly, and not by accident. You hurt me because acknowledging our partnership was inconvenient for the story you wanted to tell about yourself. What does the lawyer say? He says I have options. I sat down across from her. He says Colorado is a no-fault divorce state, which means we don't need to prove wrongdoing. He also says that since I supported you through school and the early stages of your career, There might be some interesting discussions about spousal support. Her professional mind kicked in immediately. Spousal support? But I make more money now. Now? But I invested years of my earning potential in your education and career development. That investment created an earning disparity that benefits you. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You're serious about this? Dead serious. You wanted independence from your husband's support? Congratulations. You're about to get exactly what you asked for. The divorce papers were filed the following Monday. She'd spent the weekend alternating between anger and panic, making phone calls to anyone who might talk sense into me. What she didn't expect was how those conversations would backfire. Her friend Lisa called me Tuesday evening. I hope you don't mind me reaching out directly, she said, but I needed you to know something. She called me crying yesterday, asking me to convince you to reconsider. And I told her I couldn't do that. Not after what I learned. This got my attention. What did you learn? She told me about the promotion party, but she left out some key details. So I asked around. My husband works for the same company, remember? Different department, but he was there that night. I waited. According to him, she'd been complaining about you for months, telling people at work how you were holding her back and didn't understand her ambitions. She apparently told several colleagues that she was considering leaving you once she got established in her career. My grip tightened on the phone. She said that. There's more. She told people that you were jealous of her success and that you kept trying to take credit for her achievements. She painted you as this insecure husband who couldn't handle having a successful wife. The irony was staggering. While I'd been supporting her career, she'd been systematically destroying my reputation to justify her eventual abandonment of our marriage. Why are you telling me this? Because what happened at that party makes perfect sense now. She wasn't just being professional. She was performing for an audience she'd already told that you were the problem in her life. When you tried to congratulate her, it contradicted the narrative she'd been building about you being unsupportive and jealous. After Lisa hung up, I sat in my car for 20 minutes processing this information. She hadn't just rejected my affection at the party. She'd set me up to be rejected by spending months poisoning the well against me. The next few days brought more revelations. Her yoga instructor mentioned that she'd been talking about getting her own place. Her sister let slip that they'd discussed how much money she'd save on her own. Even her hairdresser had heard stories about her difficult marriage. By Thursday, the picture was complete. She'd been planning her exit strategy for months, possibly longer. The promotion party wasn't a moment of professional anxiety. It was her testing the waters for a public separation from me. That evening, she tried one final manipulation. She came home with tears already streaming down her face, holding a handwritten letter. I wrote this for you, she said, her voice breaking. It's everything I should have said months ago. The letter was 3 pages of apologies and promises. She acknowledged her mistakes, praised my support, and outlined a detailed plan for rebuilding our marriage. It was beautifully written and completely hollow. This is very touching, I said, setting it aside. Did you write it before or after you told your yoga instructor that you were planning to leave me? Her face went white. What? Or maybe you wrote it after you told your colleagues that I was holding back your career? Or after you discussed with your sister how much money you'd save living alone? She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. Here's what I've learned over the past week. I continued. You weren't just embarrassed by my affection at your party. You were panicked that I was contradicting the story you'd been telling everyone about our marriage. You've spent months preparing people for our divorce by painting me as the villain. That's not true. Really? Because I've had some very interesting conversations with people who heard your version of our marriage. Apparently, I'm a jealous, controlling husband who can't handle your success. Apparently, I've been taking credit for your achievements and holding you back professionally. She sat down heavily, the performance finally dropping. I was just venting. Everyone complains about their spouse sometimes. Venting is saying you had a bad day. Systematically destroying your husband's reputation while planning to leave him? That's something else entirely. I wasn't planning to leave you. I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot that Lisa had sent me. It was from her private Instagram stories, posted 6 weeks ago. Sometimes you outgrow people, even people you love. Growth requires letting go of what no longer serves your journey. That's about personal growth, not marriage. Is it? Because 3 days later, you posted about knowing when to walk away from situations that drain your energy. And last month, you shared a quote about choosing yourself over relationships that require you to be smaller. She stared at the phone like it was evidence in a criminal trial, which, in a way, it was. You've been building a public narrative about leaving me for months. The only thing you didn't expect was for me to leave first. For the first time since I'd known her, she had no response. No strategic comeback, no emotional manipulation, no rational explanation. She'd been caught completely. The really sad part, I said, putting my phone away, is that I would have supported your career even if you'd been honest with me. If you'd said you needed more independence, we could have worked that out. If you'd said you felt constrained by marriage, we could have addressed that. But instead, you chose to make me the villain in a story I didn't even know I was part of. She was crying now, but they weren't strategic tears. They were the tears of someone who'd finally realized that their manipulation had backfired completely. I never wanted it to happen like this. No, you wanted it to happen on your timeline, with you controlling the narrative. You wanted to be the successful woman who outgrew her husband, not the woman whose husband got tired of being treated like an embarrassment. The difference was everything, and we both knew it. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in early spring. 3 months from the day she'd rejected my kiss at her promotion party to the day we signed papers dividing 6 years of shared life. She'd hired an expensive attorney, thinking she could leverage her higher salary into a favorable settlement. She was wrong. Her lawyer had underestimated the financial records I'd kept. Every receipt for her tuition, every bank statement showing me covering our expenses while she interned for free, every documentation of my career sacrifices to support her ambitions. My attorney painted a clear picture. I'd invested years of my earning potential in her career development, and Colorado law recognized that investment. The final settlement was more favorable to me than she'd expected. She kept her promotion and her higher salary, but she also kept the responsibility for the debts she'd accumulated during her career transition. The house went to me, along with most of our shared assets. Her dream of financial independence became a reality, just not the way she'd planned it. 6 months later, I ran into Jake from her office at a coffee shop downtown. He recognized me immediately and walked over with a knowing smile. "How are you holding up?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Better than expected." "You. Good, good. I have to tell you, though, things have been interesting at the office since your divorce became public." I raised an eyebrow. "Interesting how?" Jake glanced around and lowered his voice. "Well, remember how she used to talk about being self-made? About not needing anyone's help to succeed? Turns out, when people learned the real story about how you supported her through school and her early career, it changed some perspectives." "What kind of perspectives?" "The kind that matter for advancement." She's been passed over for 2 major projects since then. Not officially because of personal issues, but when leadership is evaluating who they want representing the company, character matters. And publicly humiliating your supportive spouse, that reflects a certain kind of character. I sipped my coffee, not sure how to respond to that. Plus, the way she handled the divorce proceedings didn't help. She tried to claim she'd built her career independently, while simultaneously arguing she deserved more assets because of her higher income. People talk, you know. Word gets around about who's authentic and who's not. Jake finished his coffee and stood to leave. "For what it's worth, most of us thought what you did that night was perfect. Sometimes people need to hear hard truths, especially when they're delivered with that kind of style." After he left, I sat there thinking about how much had changed. I'd moved back into the house we'd shared, but I'd completely redecorated. New furniture, new paint, new energy. The space felt like mine now, not like a museum of a failed relationship. My career had rebounded too. Without the constant pressure to prioritize her needs over my opportunities, I'd been able to focus on my own advancement. The promotion I'd turned down 3 years ago had led to another opportunity, then another. It turned out that when you stop making yourself smaller to accommodate someone else's growth, you discover how much room you actually have to expand. The best part was the respect. From friends who'd watched me support her for years, from colleagues who'd seen me sacrifice opportunities for her career, from family members who'd wondered why I'd tolerated being treated like a silent partner in my own marriage. When I'd finally stood up for myself, people noticed. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother. "Drinks tonight? I want to hear about your date with that attorney from your firm." I smiled, typing back, "Sure." And her name is Rachel. Dating had been easier than I'd expected. Not because I was desperate to replace what I'd lost, but because I'd finally learned what I wouldn't accept. I'd learned the difference between supporting someone's dreams and being diminished by them. I'd learned that partnership meant mutual respect, not silent sacrifice. Rachel was different. She was successful in her own right, but she never made me feel like acknowledging our connection would somehow diminish her achievements. When we went to her firm's holiday party, she introduced me proudly. When she got promoted, she thanked me publicly for my support. Simple things that meant everything. A year after the divorce, I received an unexpected email. It was from her, sent from a personal account I didn't recognize. I know I have no right to contact you, but I needed to say something. I've been in therapy for the past 8 months, working through what happened between us. I finally understand what I did to you, and I wanted to apologize properly. Not because I think it changes anything, but because you deserved better than what I gave you. You were a good husband, and I was too focused on my own insecurities to appreciate that. I hope you found the happiness you deserve. I read it twice, then deleted it. Not out of anger, but because that chapter of my life was closed. She'd made her choice that night at her promotion party, and I'd made mine when I took the microphone. Everything that followed was just the inevitable conclusion of those two decisions. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled things. If I think I should have tried harder to save the marriage, been more understanding of her professional pressures, given her more chances to change. The answer is simple, no. That night at her promotion party, when she rejected my affection because it might damage her professional image, she showed me exactly who I was in her life. I was the supporting character she was ashamed to acknowledge. When I grabbed that microphone and announced her promotion to single status, I showed her exactly who I was willing to be. The applause from her colleagues wasn't just for my dramatic gesture. It was recognition from people who'd watched her diminish my role in her success for months. It was validation from witnesses who understood that respect is earned by giving it, not by demanding it while withholding it from others. She wanted to be seen as independent and self-made. Now she is. And I wanted to be seen as someone who wouldn't tolerate disrespect from anyone, including his wife. Now I am too. We both got exactly what we asked for.
Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.